Hi, welcome to Attainable Green. I'm Jess, and today I'm going to do an update video on my Potinara Triple Love NN. This has been a requested video from Tan Lam, and hopefully this will answer a couple questions about how I grow this plant. So when I first got this Potinara, which is a cattleya hybrid, it had 5 pseudobulbs and 2 blooms. For the next 3 consecutive growths, it gave me flowers. So that means about every 6 months I saw flowers from this plant, and it was really quite lovely. And after that point, the plant suffered because I made some mistakes that I didn't know I was making at the time. So this plant has 2 leaves, and it's a bifoliate cattleya hybrid. Now I know bifoliates tend to be a little bit tricky when repotting because they're known to dump its leaves, and so the timing of repotting is pretty important. Some hybrids are more flexible with that, but I think in my case, it just ended up being bad timing and the repot was kind of a fail. So what ended up happening was I repotted it in the middle of winter, after the blooms fell, but before the new growth started. So in that case, the old roots started to die off, and I had to wait for the new growth to come out before it could reestablish itself. So it was a little bit set back. It absorbed a couple of the back pseudobulbs and it started to wrinkle so that it was pulling energy from the back bulbs to give energy to the new growth. What ended up happening after that is kind of a series of unfortunate events. So as the new growth has started, I put this plant outside to get more sun, and in the process of doing that, some snails and slugs started to chew on the brand new roots, and the new growth didn't really have enough strength to really put out a new flush of roots. So this plant definitely ended up in recovery mode. After that happened, I cleaned out the media, got rid of the snails and slugs, and just tried to reset this plant again. I wanted to give it a safe space so that it could just grow roots in peace and reestablish itself and just look its best. So fast forward to this year, this plant had a new growth that seemed to do pretty well, but it didn't bloom. So I've just been watching this plant to see what it's doing, and it's put out a new growth, and I think a few roots are just starting to emerge. So I'm waiting once again to make sure that these roots really grow and thrive and penetrate the media so that this plant will be stable, we'll have some good root growth, and kind of get back to normal. The older leaves on this plant have turned a little bit leathery and dehydrated, and that's because it doesn't really have very many roots. It has a few from last year's growth, but there's not a lot. So between the repot and this year, there's about 2 new growths that have occurred, and they both struggled a little bit. They didn't do as well, and they're not as big as the older growths. So I know that this plant is not at its peak health right now. When I was first growing this plant, it was doing fine. It was in an east-facing windowsill that got morning light, and I watered it about once a week. And I just did kind of the bare minimum of keeping the plant alive. It had no fertilizer, it had just tap water, and it definitely did well. After the repot, I wasn't sure how to take care of this plant. I just put it in all sorts of places, trying to encourage its growth, and I think just moving it around a lot kind of made it kind of more confused. But in the end, I just decided I'm just going to pick a spot, let it sit there, let it grow, and just leave it alone. So in the last couple of months, I saw new growth emerging. It was the perfect time to repot this plant in great new media, and I placed it in a east-facing windowsill with morning light, and I keep it in intermediate temperatures, which means between 65 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, and it has a humidity between 40 and 60%. Now, I'm trying to just let this plant be. I'm not going to touch it except to water, and hopefully those new roots will grow, that new growth will be healthy, and it'll just gain enough strength and energy to continue on. I water this plant about once a week, and I'm using a seaweed solution to encourage growth. I'm not adding any fertilizer at this moment because it really needs to grow and focus on root development before having more nutrients to absorb. And I'm just focusing on that for this particular plant, and hopefully it will do well. So this has not been the easiest update to talk about because it kind of shows my failures and my learning process as I'm dealing with this particular plant when I first started growing cattleya hybrids 3 years ago. I've definitely learned a lot since then, and I think a lot of my plants are doing much better than they have when I first started. So if you watch any of my future updates or even some of my more recent updates, you'll know that the plants that I've had in the past year have been doing significantly better than plants that I've had older than 2 years ago, because I've learned a lot since then, and I've gotten better at repotting, better at figuring out what the plant needs, and also just letting the plants be. I think in the beginning I just wanted to touch it, I wanted to divide it, I wanted to do so many things to the plants that weren't necessarily helpful to the plants, but it just made me feel like, oh, I'm doing something, I'm a part of this growing process, and I really wanted to be involved in it. And now that I've learned a little bit more and understand a little bit more about orchids and how they grow, I'm taking more of a hands-off approach and letting the plant just live in its place, adjust slowly to my environment, and grow to as big of a plant as possible. So that is the update on my Potinara Triple Love. If you have any questions about this plant, or if you grow it and you're having success, please let me know how you're doing in the comments below. Well, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel, Attainable Green, for all the latest updates. And hit the bell so you never miss an episode. Bye!